So our math lesson today is 10.6, and this is our last math lesson before the data and graphs test. So this is going to be all about problem solving with data. So let's look at this first problem. This first problem says make a bar graph to solve the problem. So we're going to be making a bar graph. Matthew measured the height of his plant once a week for 4 weeks. Describe how the height of the plant changed from May 1st to May 2nd. So he started May 1st. He measured it once a week until May 22nd. So up here it gives us the height they were for each week. So the first thing I'm going to do, I need to title this and I need to label my graphs like we did in our last lesson. I think a good title for this would be the height of Matthew's plant, because that's going to be all about what this graph is going to tell us. It's going to tell us the different heights that his plant was each week. On the side here, we need to figure out what are these numbers telling us. Well, these numbers are telling us the inches, or the height in inches, right? So that's what we're going to label on the side here. Height in inches. I'm kind of trying to write in sideways, so that's why it's a little sloppy. And then the last thing we need to do is we need to label this down here. So what are these for? Well, these are the dates that he measured them. So I'm just going to put the date. I'm going to put date down here. Okay, so now we need to fill out our bar graph. We got to fill it in. So May 1st, it says it was 2 inches tall May 1st. So I'm going to make sure the end of my bar is at that 2 line. Then I'm going to fill in my bar here. So there's the first bar. May 1st, when he measured it on May 1st, it was 2 inches tall. On May 8th, when he measured it, it was 3 inches tall. So I'm going to make sure on May 8th, my bar ends at that 3. At 3 inches. I'm going to fill in my bar graph. So that's what this is telling me. May 8th, it was 3 inches tall. Now May 15th, it was 5 inches tall. So I'm going to make sure that bar ends at 5. I'm going to fill my bar in. And then lastly, the last time he measured it, it was 7 inches tall. So my bar needs to end at 7 inches. All right. So we filled out our bar graph. Our bar graph is complete now. But that's not all we need to do. We need to describe how the height of the plant changed from May 1st to May 22nd. So how did the height change as he measured it each week? Where are the bars going smaller or are they going bigger? They're getting bigger. So that means the height of the plant increased or grew taller each week. So since I'm going to put the height of the plant increased each week. Increase is just another word for gets bigger. So the height of the plant increased each week, and we can see that because the plant was getting taller each week. All right, let's do another one. This one is make a bar graph to solve the problem. Bianca wrote the number of hours that she practiced playing guitar in June. Describe how the amount of practice time changed from week 1 to week 2. So we're going to use this information to help us make our bar graph. Again, we need to title our graph, and we got to label it. So we got to think of a title, and we need to label these. So what is this whole graph about? Well, this graph is telling us about Bianca's guitar practice. On the side here, these numbers are telling us the hours that she practiced each week. And then at the bottom here, it just tells us what week it is. So the first thing we need to do is fill out our bar graph. So week 1, she practiced for 1 hour. So my bar needs to end at that 1. And then I'm going to fill in my bar. So week 1, she practiced for 1 hour. Week 2, we can see she practiced for 2 hours. Week 3, she practiced 4 hours. And lastly, week 4, she practiced for 5 hours. So my bar needs to end at 5. All right, so now we've filled out our bar graph. So week 1, she practiced for 1 hour. Week 2, she practiced 2 hours. Week 3, she practiced 4 hours. And week 4, she practiced 5 hours. So now we need to describe how the amount of practice time changed from week 1 to week 4. So how did the amount of time change each week? Well, we can see that the practice time increased each week. Each week, she practiced for longer amounts of time. So my answer down here, where it says the amount of practice time, I'm going to finish my sentence and say, the amount of practice time increased, no, I want black, increased the amount of practice time increased each week. That's the data we can gather from her graph here. All right, we're going to do one last one. So this is a line plot. We haven't been able to talk about line plots much. Line plots are super easy to look at. So this line plot here is telling us the lengths of strings in inches. So there's different amounts of string, or there's an amount of strings, and each X represents a string. So that means there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 strings. So they measured, whoever did this, measured 12 strings, and they plotted it. So that means there are 2 strings that are 6 inches long, 3 strings that are 7 inches long, 1, 2, 3, 4 strings that are 8 inches long, and 1, 2, 3 strings that are 9 inches long. Okay? So my first question is, how many strings are 9 inches long? Well, we got to count how many X's are above 9. There's 1, 2, 3 X's. So that means there are 3 strings that are 9 inches long. Our next question is, how many strings are more than 6 inches long? Well, there are 2 strings that are 6 inches long, but I don't want to know how many are 6 inches long. I want to know how many are more than 6 inches long. So that means we need to count up all of the X's that are bigger than 6 inches. So that means all of the 7-inch ones, all of the 8-inch ones, and all of the 9-inch ones. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 strings that are bigger or that are more than 6 inches long. All right, now you can go do the 10.6 PMT on your HMH player.